Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're embarking on a pretty ambitious exploration. We're going to be connecting some dots that span, well, 2,000 years and thousands of miles.
It's a big jump.
It is. We're going from ancient Greek philosophy all the way to political speeches in Singapore and then landing right on the digital health app you might have on your phone right now.
And it seems like a massive leap. But the thread connecting them all is incredibly strong. And it's all about intentional, structured language. We so often focus on, the speaker or maybe the delivery, the emotion. But our sources today, they make this really powerful case that the actual content of the rhetoric, that's the real engine for change, for resilience.
And that's really the mission for this deep dive. We want to cut through the noise of just, inspirational words and actually understand the mechanics of why certain language works.
Exactly.
We're going to unpack 3 different layers. First, the internal voice we use for our own self-management. Then the guided conversation in therapy. And finally, the big one, the rhetoric used for collective leadership.
And if you're looking for that one single idea, the connective tissue that binds all 3 of these together, it's this concept of self-efficacy.
Self-efficacy.
Yeah. It's the belief in your own ability to influence outcomes, to do what needs to be done. And it doesn't matter if you're battling a chronic illness or, building a nation. Language is the tool you use to build that belief.
Okay, so let's unpack that internal layer first. This feels like where it all begins, with resilience. Our research really dives into how self-management gets compromised when someone's living with a chronic condition like depression or diabetes. It almost always comes with low self-esteem and this diminished self-efficacy.
That's right. And it's not just some sad side effect. It becomes this massive active obstacle. Low self-esteem, it just leads to poor coping, more health problems. It's a vicious cycle.
So if the cycle is that vicious, how do you even break into it?
Well, the sources point to something called the theory of triadic influence, and it suggests that self-esteem is an interpersonal influence on self-efficacy. So basically, you got to boost your sense of self-worth first. That's what gives you the willpower for the long, hard work of self-management.
But that's where we hit this really critical finding. It's not as simple as just be positive.
No. Generic inspirational quotes or just like excessive optimism. They're often not just ineffective, they can actually backfire.
I found that fascinating. One study showed that when kids with low self-esteem got what they felt was inflated praise, they actually sought out fewer challenges later on.
Right. If you already feel like a failure, being told to just be happy or you're a superstar, it doesn't land. It feels like a form of invalidation.
Like you're not being seen.
Exactly. You tend to prefer accurate, honest feedback, not just glossy praise. So the key isn't just positivity, it's tailoring the content. The motivational message has to address the specific root cause of why that person's self-esteem is low.
And this research gave us 3 brilliant examples of this. So let's say the core issue is a lack of social acceptance. You feel isolated, like an outsider. What kind of language do you need then?
You need language that validates the identity you already have. The sources call them experience of others' I quotes. It's not about external validation. It's about internal recognition.
Can you give an example?
Sure. A statement like, why am I trying to be somebody? I am somebody. It helps you realize your worth is inherent. It's not dependent on whether you're accepted by a group.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so what about the person who struggles precisely because they reject false praise? The realist who sees the darkness, telling them to cheer up. That's just going to make them dig their heels in.
For them, you need a reality check, quote. And it's counterintuitive. You have to acknowledge the struggle. You validate their negative experience.
So you meet them where they are.
Precisely. The example they cited was great. Even a happy life cannot be without a measure of darkness. And the word happy would lose its meaning if it were not balanced by sadness. It validates their worldview, but gives it, a bit of perspective.
And the last one, which is huge in chronic illness, is that feeling of losing control, of losing your autonomy. If you feel powerless, what message helps?
You focus on choice quotes. The motivation centers on the power of your internal response, no matter what's happening externally. The example was so good. The difference between misery and happiness depends on what we do with our attention.
It brings the focus back to the one thing you can control.
Your focus, your reaction.
And this idea, controlling our attention, our internal response, this is where we make that leap you were talking about. This connects modern behavioral theory straight back to ancient philosophy.
To Stoicism, specifically.
Right.
The core Stoic view is that destructive emotions, what they call apathy or passions, They aren't these uncontrollable surges. They believe they were fundamentally the result of errors in judgment, false beliefs.
So if your feelings are based on a flawed interpretation,
And they're correctable. You can fix them with reason, with disciplined language. I mean, it is the original framework for modern cognitive therapy. It's a whole system for self-management.
and they had these clear, repeatable techniques. The most famous one has to be the dichotomy of control.
That's the foundation. It's all about directing your energy only toward what is truly up to us, our judgments, our intentions, and practicing acceptance for everything else, the indifference.
Things like your health, your wealth, what other people think.
Exactly. If I'm worried about the economy, Stoicism says stop worrying about national policy. That's indifferent. And focus on your own work ethic, your own savings, what's actually up to you.
Then there's the really counterintuitive one, negative visualization, premeditatio malorum. Why would thinking about disaster, illness, job loss make you more resilient? It sounds pessimistic.
It sounds like it, but it's not pessimism, it's inoculation. By mentally preparing for misfortune, you build psychological resistance. So if it does happen, the shock is less, the emotional force is blunted.
And it has another effect,
A
right?
huge one. It makes you appreciate what you have right now. When you really think about the fact that you could be sick, your current health, even if it's not perfect, suddenly feels incredibly precious.
And the last one, the technique that really underpins it all, cognitive distancing.
Yeah, and Epictetus captured it perfectly. Men are disturbed not by things, but by the view which they take of them. The whole practice is about separating the objective event from your subjective interpretation of it.
The car cut me off. That's the event.
Right. They did it to spite me and ruin my day. That's the subjective interpretation. That's the error in judgment. And the space between those two things, that's where you build resilience.
So we've moved from our own thoughts to this idea of an external guided dialogue. And this brings us right to the communication style used in healthcare and therapy, motivational interviewing, or MI.
MI is such a critical bridge here. It applies all those principles of internal motivation, but in a collaborative setting.
So what is it exactly?
It's a goal-oriented way of communicating that's designed to strengthen a person's motivation by, and this is key, eliciting their own reasons for change. It's not about fixing them. It's about evoking what's already there.
And the guiding spirit is often summed up by the acronym RULE. R is for resist the writing reflex. Why is it so important for a therapist or coach to not jump in and try to fix the problem?
Because the moment you start arguing or trying to force a fix, you trigger what's called psychological reactance. It just pushes the person deeper into their resistance.
You're creating an argument.
You are. If I tell you, you have to quit smoking, your natural instinct is to defend why you smoke. The sources even quote Pascal on this. Lasting change is much more likely when the reasons are self-discovered.
So resisting that urge to fix is number one. Then the U is understand motivations, L is listen with empathy, and E is empower.
And there's that E again. Empower. Supporting self-efficacy. It's always the goal.
So the practical goal in the conversation is to listen for and then reinforce what's called change talk.
Yep. That's any self-expressed language from the client about why they might want to change.
And there's an acronym for that too, DARN CAT.
Of course. DARN is the preparatory stage. Desire, ability, reason, and need.
Give me an example of reason.
A reason would be, it's important because I want to be able to play with my grandkids. It's the why. A need might be, my doctor says I have to lose weight. The therapist's job isn't to lecture about the need, it's to find and elicit that personal reason.
And once that's strong, you look for the SIACHA, commitment, activation, taking steps. That's the action phase.
Right, and the toolkit for getting there is summarized as OR. Open-ended questions, affirmations, reflective listening, and summarizing.
Let's talk about affirmations. They seem to tie directly back to building that self-efficacy.
They absolutely do. This is basically catching them being good. It's using strength-based language. You showed incredible courage just by showing up today. It makes the person reflect on the strengths they already possess.
Okay, and then the real heart of it all seems to be reflective listening. It's more than just repeating back what someone said.
Oh, much more. It's about forming a hypothesis about what they really mean, the hidden emotion or the conflict, and then saying it back in different words.
And there are different types of reflection.
3 main ones. Simple reflection is just restating, which builds trust. But then you get the more strategic ones, like double-sided reflection. That one is so powerful for dealing with ambivalence.
Give us a clear example of that one.
Okay, imagine someone says, I know I should study, but playing video games till 2 a.m. is the only way I can de-stress.
Okay.
The double-sided reflection would be something like, so on one hand, gaming is your main tool for coping with stress, but at the same time, you're really concerned about what it's doing to your grades. You validate both sides without judgment.
And by stating that contradiction so neutrally, the person has to confront it themselves.
Exactly. And then you have the riskiest one, the amplified reflection.
Yes. This one sounds tricky.
It is, but it can have a huge payoff.
Yeah.
You exaggerate their statement a little bit to highlight the discrepancy. So if a client says, I just don't think I can fit walking into my day, the amplified reflection might be, so it sounds like you believe you have absolutely no control over your schedule and getting fit is simply impossible for you.
That would definitely make me pause.
It forces them to step back and self-correct. They'll almost always say, well, no, not impossible. I guess I could walk for 15 minutes. The therapist never argued. They just reflected in a way that made the client find their own reason to change.
So now we're shifting to the macro level. How do you use rhetoric to motivate an entire population? We're moving from individual change to collective national change.
And the research on charismatic leadership is so clear on this. Passion and a great delivery that might get you short-term emotion. But it's the content of the rhetoric that achieves the big long-term goals. Goals like frame alignment and trust building.
Frame alignment, that's about linking everyone's individual interests to the leader's goals, making it feel personal.
It is, and charismatic leaders do this by providing a force for change. They have to articulate really serious threats the community is facing, but at the same time they have to paint this idealized, attractive picture of the future, a kind of utopian vision.
And they also have to hammer home the idea of a collective identity.
Pushing different groups to merge into a single, shared identity to pursue that vision together.
And trust is the other half of that equation.
It's essential. Leaders build it by showing competence and integrity. Competence comes from mentioning past success, reminding people of real victories to prove they can lead. And integrity comes from amplifying specific values, like democracy or meritocracy, so followers feel the leader is morally aligned with them.
Which brings us to this incredible content analysis in our sources. A study of Lee Kuan Yew's National Day rally speeches in Singapore from 1959 all the way to 1990.
It's an amazing window into how intentional political language was used to literally build a nation.
And the findings were so specific. What were the dominant themes?
Overwhelmingly, the two most common themes in over half of all speeches were articulating threats in the environment and mentioning past success. So the message was dominated by a serious look at danger, paired with proof of past competence.
What kind of threats are we talking about? You'd assume maybe military or economic?
You would, but that's not what the data showed. The biggest concern, over 32% of all identified threats, was aimed at social and cultural trends.
Really? Like what?
Things like the danger of Singaporeans developing a take-things-for-granted mentality, or the challenges of a rapidly rising population. It shows the leader was actively trying to shape the internal social psychology of the country.
And this focus changed over time.
It did. Right after independence in the early 60s, the emphasis was all on collective identity, forging unity. But then from the mid-70s on, for over a decade, it was just overwhelmingly dominated by articulating threats in the environment.
That long period of just constant threat articulation, that's highly strategic. It's a continuous motivation machine.
It is.
It's interesting, though, that appeals to an idealized vision or to history were actually found in less than half the speeches.
And that probably comes down to the local culture. The research mentions a preference for indirectness, for Hangzhou. So charismatic leaders there often showed self-confidence indirectly, using we or Singapore instead of I when talking about the future.
So the message was strong, but the delivery of that confidence was more collective and understated. The rhetorical engine was threats plus proof of competence. So this deep dive, it's really unified three huge domains, philosophy, therapy, politics, under this one central idea. Motivational success at any level depends on targeted, content-driven communication.
And it's all designed to reinforce that core belief.
Yeah.
Self-efficacy.
Right. Whether it's internal, therapeutic, or collective, the process requires content that corrects flawed judgments.
That addresses the specific root cause of low esteem and is honest about the difficulty while still affirming competence.
Therapeutically, we saw how MI uses that collaborative language to pull out a person's own darn cat reasons for change, which fundamentally reinforces their belief that they can change.
And at the collective level, charismatic leaders build trust and align goals not just with passion, but through the very structure of their message, detailing threats, affirming values, and proving competence.
So let's go back to that really dominant finding from the Singapore study. The most pervasive theme was the constant articulation of serious threats. And let's connect that back to the therapeutic technique we talked about. Motivational interviewing uses amplified reflection to highlight a discrepancy, to spur a kind of deep personal reappraisal and change.
Which raises a really profound question. Could the sustained, forceful articulation of national threats by a leader function as a kind of macro-level national amplified reflection?
A national amplified reflection.
Yeah. Is it a deliberate rhetorical tool to force the public to confront the discrepancy between, say, the comfortable status quo and the real dangers they face, to spur that collective reappraisal and drive positive national behaviors, like hard work and unity?
It makes you realize that the structure of language is just so much more than descriptive. It's a powerful, profound tool of influence, and it demands that you be so aware of how it's being used, whether you're the speaker, the therapist, or the citizen receiving the message. The content is the strategy.